Warning, this podcast contains descriptions of murder, torture and abuse. As a result, it may not be suitable for everybody. Dublin, Ireland, the largest city and capital of the Republic of Ireland and former Viking settlement. Dublin boasts 666 pubs in total, the oldest established in 1168, called the Brazen Head, perfect for a pint of Guinness. Dublin is famous for its literature and culture, and some of the world's finest minds have come out of the city. Listen to the hometown murder cases of the Phoenix Park murders, which consist of the stabbings of Lord Frederick Cavendish and Thomas Henry Burke, the murder of Elaine O'Hara by Architect Graham Dwyer and his sadistic sexual practices, and the Scissor Sisters, who killed and dismembered their mother's boyfriend. The first case we're looking at today is the Phoenix Park murders. This was the fatal stabbings of Lord Frederick Cavendish and Thomas Henry Burke in Phoenix Park in Dublin on the 6th of May 1882. Cavendish was the newly appointed Chief Secretary for Ireland and Burke was the permanent Under Secretary, the most senior Irish civil servant. The assassination was carried out by members of the rebel group Irish National Invincibles, a more radical breakaway from the Irish Republican Brotherhood. The Invincibles failed numerous times to kill Chief Secretary Buckshot Forster before he resigned his office in protest at Kilmainham Treaty. The group then settled on a plan to kill the permanent Under Secretary Thomas Henry Burke at the Irish office. Newly installed Chief Secretary for Ireland, Lord Frederick Cavendish, on the very day of his arrival to Ireland, was walking with Burke to the Viceregal Lodge, the out-of-season resident or Lord Lieutenant of Ireland. The first assassination was committed by Joe Brady, who stabbed Burke with a 12-inch knife, followed in short order by Tim Kelly, who stabbed Cavendish. Both men used surgical knives delivered by Mary Ann Bryn in order to avoid making a lot of noise while carrying out the killings. Cavendish was not targeted and his presence was happenstance. Thomas Miles, resident surgeon at the nearby Dr. Stevens Hospital, was summoned to render medical assistance to the victims. The Lord Lieutenant Lord Spencer described hearing screams before witnessing a man run into the lodge grounds shouting, quote, "Lord Frederick Cavendish and Mr. Burke are killed," end quote. The assailants were driven away in a cab by James Fitzharris, nicknamed Skin the Goat, who served as a getaway driver. The hunt for the killers was led by Superintendent John Mallon, a Catholic who came from Armagh. Mallon had a pretty shrewd idea who was involved. He suspected a number of former Fenian activists. A large number of suspects were arrested and kept in prison by claiming they were connected with other crimes. By playing off one suspect against another, Mallon got several of them to reveal what they knew. The case was successfully prosecuted by Attorney General Solicitor General James Murphy, QC, later Justice Murphy, and Peter O'Brien before Justice William O'Brien. Invincibles leader James Carey, Michael Kavanagh, and John Hanlon agreed to testify against the others. John Brady, Michael Fagan, Thomas Caffrey, Dan Curley and Tim Kelly were convicted of the murder and were hanged by William Marwood in Kilmainham Gaol in Dublin between 14th of May and 9th of June 1883. Others convicted as accessories to the crime were sentenced to long prison terms. The getaway driver, James Fitzharris, was acquitted of murder but was retried as an accessory and convicted. Only the case of Tim Kelly gave any real difficulty. He was 19 and generally said to look much younger, and by referring to him as a child, his defence counsel created enough unease for two juries to disagree. Only after an unprecedented third trial was he found guilty. Charles Stuart Parnell's policy of allying his party to Gladstone's Liberal Party in 1886 to enable Home Rule was also ultimately defeated by the murders. Gladstone's minister, Lord Harrington, was the elder brother of Lord Frederick Cavendish. Infuriated by the manner of his brother's early death, Harrington split with Gladstone on the Home Rule Bills of 1886 and 1893 and led the breakaway Liberal Unionist Association, which allied itself to Lord Salisbury's Conservative government. In ensuring 1886 general election, the Conservatives and Liberal Unionists swept the board. This delayed Home Rule by 28 years until the Third Irish Home Rule Bill, which was passed technically in 1914 but which was never effected. Charles Stuart Parnell made a speech condemning the murders in 1882. This increases already huge popularity in both Britain and Ireland. He had just enabled some reforms under the Kilmainham Treaty 4 days before the murder. Parnell's reputation increased in Ireland, being seen as a much more moderate reformer who never excused such tactics. In March 1887, the Times printed letters purportedly from Parnell claiming sympathy with the murderers and that his public denunciation of them was insincere. It emerged that the letters were forgeries written by journalist Richard Pickett, and Parnell was personally vindicated by the Parnell Commission in 1888 to 1889. The second hometown murder case we're looking at is the one of Elaine O'Hara. She was born 17th of March 1976 and was an Irish childcare worker who was murdered in August 2012 by Architect Graham Dwyer. She was last seen alive at a public park in Shanahey, Dublin on 22nd of August. The remains of her body was discovered on Killarkey Mountain, south of Dublin, in September 2013. The investigation of her disappearance and later her death was widely reported. The 2015 trial and conviction of Dwyer led to the circulation of evidence concerning O'Hara's and Dyer's involvement in BDSM sexual subculture. The evidence of Dyer's sadistic sexual practices led to the murder being one called the most shocking crimes in Irish history. Elaine O'Hara was educated in St. Joseph of Cluny Secondary School. She was bullied and she suffered many mental health issues from her teens and regularly was hospitalised for psychiatric care. She had been treated by professional Alan Clare, who diagnosed depression and borderline personality disorder. She also suffered from asthma, diabetes and was dyslexic. Her mother's death in 2002 was a major setback for her, as was the sudden death of Professor Clare in 2007. In 2005, she moved out of her family home in Killarney to a flat in Blackrock. In 2008, she moved to another flat in Blackrock before acquiring an affordable housing unit in Bellarmine Plaza, Stepside. O'Hara worked as a childcare assistant in Ballybrack and a part-time in a newsagent in Ballyrock. She was taking night classes in the town of Dunlaghare with the hopes of becoming a Montessori teacher. O'Hara went missing from her home on the 22nd of August 2012, and it was initially assumed that she had disappeared while volunteering at the 2012 Tourship races. Inside her house, she had left her bag, purse and mobile phone, and security footage showed her leaving home with a different mobile phone. She was last seen by a jogger in Shanahag Park in the county of Dunlaghare, Rathdown, just to the south of Shankill. It was later determined she'd gone to Shanahag Cemetery where her mother was buried. A woman was heard crying loudly in the graveyard by a witness. The witness saw the woman, fitting O'Hara's general description, crying beside an old grave, but could not positively identify her as O'Hara. Her car was later found nearby, and it was assumed she had, given her psychological history, committed suicide by jumping off the nearby cliffs. On the 10th of September 2013, 3 days before the eventual discovery of her body, angler William Fagan and his brother and another man spattered a bag lying in the water of Archery Reservoir near Roundwood, County Wicklow. Normally the depth of water at the bridge where evidence was found was 15 feet to 20 feet, but in 2013, following a long hot period, it was as shallow as 12 inches to a maximum of 18 inches. This exposed items that would have otherwise been beneath the surface. Inside the bag they found handcuffs, clothing, a ball gag, restraints and leg restraints. The following day, Fagan handed the items he found into Roundwood Garda Station. Garda James O'Donoghue conducted several further searches at the scene and on the 16th of September found handcuffs, keys, a leather mask, a knife, an inhaler and a chain with a ring on it. A Dunnes Store loyalty card found attached to a keyring was identified as belonging to O'Hara. The Garda Water Unit searched the lake on the 17th of September and the 7th of October 2013 and found 2 Nokia mobile phones, 2 batteries, a pair of glasses, sunglasses and a rucksack. A number of frames of glasses and the prescription matched the record for O'Hara held on file at a branch of Specsavers in Dunleghare. Dog trainer Magali Vergnet regularly walked dogs on a woodland near Kilkelly in the foothills of the Dublin mountains. Starting on the 21st of August 2013, one of her dogs would regularly disappear and return with some bones during their walk, which Vergnet at first believed were of an animal. On the 13th of September 2013, the same dog again retrieved more bone bones, this time accompanied by clothing. Concerned that there might be human, she contacted the landowner, Frank Doyle. They returned to the land with another man. With an isolated clearing, they found scattered and gnawed bones, including the remains of a rib cage and a jawbone. Realising the remains were human, they contacted the Garda. Only 65% of her skeleton was discovered. O'Hara's body was later identified through dental records. Police discovered that in late 2017, O'Hara visited a fetish adult website, alt.com, under the profile name helpmelearn36/F and viewed the profile of Architect 72, which was linked to a Gmail address named Fetish Boy. Police linked these to Graham Dwyer, an architect. Evidence emerged that Dwyer and O'Hara had embarked on a sexual relationship that involved bondage, violence and knives. The relationship was very intense throughout 2008. Violent homemade sex videos and fragments of emails were retrieved from their laptops. Their relationship dwindled but was rekindled in March 2011 when Dwyer contacted O'Hara through a prepaid mobile phone. Dwyer had a mobile phone number which began with 083 and both he and O'Hara had mobile phones with that number that began 086. Recovered texts from them discarded but still operational Nokia phones sent by Dwyer under the name Master to O'Hara under the name of Slave during this period included: I want to stick my knife in flesh while I sexually aroused. I would like to stab a girl to death sometime. My urge to rape, stab and kill is huge. You have to help me control or satisfy it. Dwyer did not have a history of criminality. His background suggested nothing of note. Born the 13th of September 1972 in Bandon, County Cork. After completing secondary school he moved to Dublin in the 1990s. He studied architecture at Dublin Institute of Technology, where he began a relationship with a Donegal woman, Emma McShay. McShay soon became pregnant with a son. McShay would later testify in court that he once confided to her that he fantasized about stabbing a woman during sex, and he started to bring a kitchen knife to their bedroom, pretending to stab her. The relationship finished in 1996, and a year later he began dating fellow architect student Gemma Heaney. They wed in Sligo Cathedral in 2002, and 5 years later they moved to Kerrymount Close, Foxrock. Dwyer's architectural career took off and he started to work for A&D Werger and Partners Architects on Lower Bagot Street on the 2nd of July 2001. He was named the director in 2006 and was involved in a range of major developments at home, including Carlow Institute of Technology, Leopardstown Racecourse, and in Poland. Hobbies included flying radio-controlled aircraft, driving luxury cars, while his wife Emma enjoyed sailing. According to information disclosed during the Garda interviews, Dwyer's financials were in difficulty at the time of the murder. Evidence from O'Hara's phone and laptop led to warrants to search Dwyer's house, where further evidence was discovered. He was arrested and initially denied knowing O'Hara, which was refuted by security footage, and later denied murdering O'Hara. The trial began on the 26th of January 2015. At the trial, violent homemade sex videos and fragments of emails provided evidence of sexual use of bondage, violence and knives. Numerous messages from O'Hara referred to Dwyer's repeated threats to stab and kill her. Dwyer's defence counsel Remy Farrell argued there was no evidence tying Dwyer to O'Hara's death. O'Hara had a history of depression and her cause of death had never been determined by pathologists. She had recently been released from a psychiatric hospital which she had entered not having suicidal thoughts. There was not a screed of evidence in respect to the cause of death or even evidence that there was a murder. This, according to Farrell, both police and her own family at first believed that she had probably committed suicide. O'Hara's interest in BDSM and the lifestyle, he had been known to the police since the discovery of her body, and that there were many circumstances that could have led to her death. Farrell said that the violent language used by Dwyer in his texts were proof of nothing more than his sexual fantasies. Sean Guerin, SC, prosecuting, said the accumulated evidence pointed to a detailed plan by Dwyer to commit and get away with murder. Dwyer had used O'Hara's low self-esteem to manipulate her. His desires to kill a woman's well documented in his texts. O'Hara was not a willing participant in sexual violence. She repeatedly expressed her wish not to be stabbed and not to be beaten by him. She only wanted companionship, love, and ultimately a child. Knowing she had recently been released from a psychiatric hospital, Dwyer had lured her to the cemetery, intending to take her to the mountains and kill her, expecting that if her body was discovered, her death would be deemed to be suicide. But the attempt to conceal his relationship to her by hiding the mobile phones and O'Hara's personal effects was clear evidence of intent. On the 27th of March 2015, Dwyer was convicted in a unanimous verdict. Sentencing him to life imprisonment, the judge Tony Hunt stated that he 100% agreed with jury's decision. The jury was exempted from jury duty for 30 years. During and after the trial, Dwyer's legal team highlighted that legislation covering the capture and use of mobile phone data relied upon the prosecution in the trial was invalid. Specifically, Dwyer's legal team had claimed grounds for appeal on the basis that Ireland's communications in relation to the Data Retention Act 2011, in turn giving effect to the European Data Retention Directive, was invalid because the underlying European directive had been struck down by the European Court of Justice in 2014. These claims contributed to a review of how state agencies use the type of data covered by the legislation. And if upheld, that had been reported, the appeal would impact the admissibility of the mobile phone evidence in the Dwyer case. This would also affect other cases which rely upon mobile phone data in Garda investigations. The last case we're looking at today for hometown murders is the Scissor Sisters. Linda and Charlotte Mulhall, who were called the Scissor Sisters by the media, were sisters from Dublin, known for having killed and dismembered their mother's boyfriend, Farah Noor, in March 2005. Nor was killed with a Stanley knife wielded by Charlotte and struck with a hammer by Linda following a confrontation with the sisters and their mother, Kathleen Mulhall. His head and penis were sliced off and the rest of his corpse dismembered by the women and dumped in Dublin's Royal Canal, where a piece of leg still wearing a sock was spotted floating near Cork Park 10 days later. The subsequent manhunt and the trial in October 2006 attracted intense media attention in Ireland as the true details of the crime slowly emerged. The sisters and their mother were arrested but released until Linda confessed her involvement in the crime. Kathleen Mulhall left the country at this point to live in England. When Charlotte and Linda were charged with the murder in December 2005, their father, John Mulhall, hanged himself in Phoenix Park. As a result of the method they used to carry out the killing, Linda and Charlotte Mulhall were dubbed the Scissor Sisters by the media. Justice Paul Colony, presiding over the trial, said during sentences that it was the, quote, most grotesque killing that occurred in my professional lifetime, end quote. Charlotte Mulhall was given the mandatory life sentence and Linda Mulhall was given a 15-year sentence for manslaughter, with both being sent to Mountjoy Women's Prison in Dublin. Nor's head and penis were never recovered, although Linda later admitted they put the head in rubbish bins around Phoenix Park. It also thought they carried the head by bus to Talgate and buried it in a field, while Linda returning later to dig it up, carrying it to another field using her son's school bag, smash it further with a hammer and bury it again. Linda attracted further media attention when she slit her wrist when sectioned. Charlotte also attracted media attention when a photograph of her holding a knife to a male prisoner's throat was published. That action resulted in an increased security presence in all Irish prisons, and Charlotte was moved from Mountjoy to Limerick. Kathleen Mulhall voluntarily returned to Ireland in February 2008 and faced several charges. She pleaded guilty to helping clean up the crime scene to conceal evidence and was sentenced to 5 years in prison in May 2009. The case has resulted in several books and has been examined in at least one television series. It was said by Irish Independent's legal affairs correspondent Derbo MacDonald to have been, quote, fueled fears of ritual killings in Ireland, end quote. The Mulhalls were from Kilcare Gardens, a working class area in Talgate, South Dublin. Their parents, John and Kathleen, raised a family of 3 boys and 3 girls. John allegedly abused Kathleen. Their marriage broke down and Kathleen entered into a relationship with Farah Noor in 2008. Noor moved into their family home with Kathleen and John took some of his children and moved out. He rented various accommodations in Dublin over a period of a year, then moved back into the home after Kathleen and Noor returned to Dublin in 2004. Noor allegedly subjected Kathleen to regular beatings. Linda was 30 years old at the time of the killing. She was unemployed and left school early and had 4 children. The relationship with the father of her children broke up and she got into another relationship with an individual called Wayne Kinsella, who subsequently abused them, in one case beating the children with electrical flex. The abuse was later investigated and the children were taken into care by social services, while Wayne Kinsella served a 6-year prison sentence for his cruelty to children. Kinsella himself had an extremely violent history, having been thrown out of school for violent behaviour, according to his elder sister Donna. In 2013 RTE radio interview, Donna Kinsella said that her brother Wayne was always an extremely violent person, even during childhood, and stated that he used to beat members of his own family, including his parents, and had broken her jaw on one occasion. In May 1996, Kinsella received an 8-year prison sentence for the murder of a retired auctioneer, Thomas Foreman, who was killed while visiting his wife's grave in Gallsnevin Cemetery in Dublin on the 23rd of September 1995. In May 2012, Kinsella was jailed for life after being found guilty of the murder of 29-year-old Dubliner Adil Eshi, who was stabbed to death in a field near Terrorstone on 6th of January 2011. Kinsella claimed he had murdered Elsie because he believed that he'd been involved in the killing of his younger brother, Lee Kinsella, who was shot dead in Finglas in May 2006. Wayne's sister Donna said he had nothing to do with Lee's death. Wayne's nephew, Michael Kinsella, was later jailed for 15 years in May 2016 for helping his uncle kill Mr. Ashley. Linda Mulhall, meanwhile, had a history of alcohol abuse and suffered from addiction to heroin. She had one previous conviction in 1993 of larceny. Charlotte Mulhall was 21 years old when the killing took place. Like her sister, she had a history of drug and alcohol abuse. She had a number of minor previous convictions for criminal damage and public order offences and was charged with criminal damage and given probation act in October 2005. She was also involved in prostitution. During the trial, Garda described the girl's upbringing as troubled and tough. Farah Noor was 40 years old at the time of his death. He arrived in Ireland in December 1996, claiming to be Somali called Shamali Shalim, whose family had been killed in Mogadishu during the Somali Civil War. Subsequent investigations revealed that he was in fact Kenyan and his family was still alive. Farah was ethnically Somali. The Department of Justice, Equality and Law Reform ordered that he be deported, but he appealed and was granted Irish citizenship in March 1999 on the grounds he became the father of an Irish-born child. He had 4 previous convictions for offences including intoxication, threatening abusive behaviour and an assault. In 1997 he raped a mentally disabled 16-year-old Chinese girl. She later gave birth to a son. 2 other women had children by him and both described having been raped by him. Noor faced 8 charges of disorder and assault, one involving a sexual assault in which a knife was found at the scene by Garda. He was convicted on 3 occasions but never served jail time. Noor lived in a number of areas in Dublin as well as the inner city before moving in with Kathleen Mulhall. Garda described him as being particularly violent towards women. The killing took place at the flat of Kathleen Mulhall, who was renting in a house on Richmond Cottages, Summerhill, on the 22nd of March 2005. This was the bank holiday of St. Patrick's weekend. On the day of the killing, Linda, Charlotte and their mother and Noor had been drinking heavily in a Dublin city centre. Farah bought vodka, Kathleen purchased Coca-Cola, which they drank as they walked along the city before stopping off at the River Liffey Boardwalk, where Charlotte and her mother took ecstasy tablets. They returned to Kathleen's flat, where the women took ecstasy. Kathleen crushed a tablet into the victim's drink, so they were all on the same buzz. Linda and Noor were sitting on a 2-seater couch, while Charlotte was sitting on the arm when Noor started touching Linda in a sexual way. He spoke into her ear, put his arms around her waist and refused to let her go. Kathleen then started screaming at him and a verbal altercation took place where Kathleen was alleged to have instructed them to just kill him for me. Charlotte picked up a Stanley knife and struck Noor across the throat, inflicting a wound that sent him to the ground. Linda then picked up a hammer and hit him on the head a number of times. Their mother locked on but did not participate. Noor was stabbed at least 27 times. It may have been more, but the pathologists had no opportunity to examine the body. Linda and Charlotte then dragged Noor's corpse into the bedroom and then the bathroom, where they began to dismember the remains. Noor's head, limbs and penis were severed using a knife, possibly a kitchen knife and also a hammer. They put towels over his legs to stem the flow of blood. The dismemberment took a number of hours and the body parts were placed in a black plastic bag and a sports bag before they were being disposed in the Royal Canal. This took 3 women several trips. They decided not to throw the head in to prevent identification. The head was brought by bus to Tallagate, where they walked through the square shopping centre to Tymon North Park. They walked where Charlotte dug a hole with a knife to bury the head. Kathleen Mulhall threw the knives and hammer into the nearby pond. A number of days later, Linda allegedly returned to the park and dug up the head. Using her son's school bag, she transferred it to a field in Killinarden estate, where they broke it up with a hammer before burying it again. The killing only came to light 10 days later when Noor's leg, with a sock at the end, was seen floating in the canal a few hundred yards from Croke Park. Garda sub-aqua divers retrieved most of the rest of his body in 7 parts. Garda traced his identity through media appeals. Noor was only identified when somebody recognised a t-shirt on the recovered torso. That key witness, a Somalian man who was first to connect the missing Noor with the 3 Mulhall women, was paid a substantial reward by Crime Stoppers. Noor's head and penis were never found. The sisters and their parents were arrested in August, but denied any knowledge of the killing. A number of weeks later, Linda contacted investigated officers admitting her involvement. Garda took voluntary statement from her at her home until this, making limited progress in the case. When they searched the Mulhall flat in Summerhill, they found bloodstains that were later confirmed to match Noor's DNA. After Linda's confession, Kathleen fled out of the country in September 2005, and the Garda were unable to locate her again until January 2008. She had been living in England. Thank you for everybody who's listened to this episode. This episode has been researched, written and hosted by me, Andrew Knight. Sound, music and editing has been provided by Harry Edmondson. Make sure you subscribe to the show anywhere where you listen to your podcast. This allows the episode to be downloaded automatically as soon as it's released. Please reach out to us on the social media. We're at Hometown Murders on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. We'd love to hear from you. Please support the show by leaving a 5-star rating or a review. It really does help.